What does it take to defend freedom? Not in the battlefield, but in the battle of ideas. Freedom is hard. It doesn't preserve itself. It requires people willing to defend the ideas that make opportunity possible. My next guest has spent her life doing just that, from Diario Las Americas to the White House, and now the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. Helen Aguirre Ferré has dedicated her career to defending America's first freedom. And I am so happy to welcome you to Sabor of Freedom.
Judy, thanks so much for the invitation. So glad to be here.
Thank you, Helen. I want to talk about your amazing trajectory. But behind every amazing, wonderful person like you are is an amazing family, amazing support, right? You come from a family of journalists.
My father founded Diario Las Americas, 4th of July, 1953. He picked that date deliberately because he was so impressed with the founding of our great nation, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which makes the First Amendment possible, right? He was originally from Nicaragua. He was a political exile from 1947. And that was the first Somoza Garcia dictatorship. And he used to say, yes, they did not follow democratic principles, but in comparison to what turned out later for Nicaragua, oh my gosh, certainly a walk in the park. Because unfortunately, Nicaragua is part of that triage of communists that took over Venezuela, Cuba, as well as Nicaragua. So when he looked at what to do, what really made my father, Horacio Aguirre, pioneer, is that he saw Miami as a communications hub. This was the place where you could create Spanish language media. In 1953, fíjate, this was 2 weeks before the Fidel Castro's attack of Moncada in Cuba, where Moncada being the military command, where the barracks, where he first launches his first main attack on the island. So Diario Las Américas ends up being the newspaper of record, recording everything that occurred during the beginnings of that revolution and all the way through. He subsequently sold it. I guess it was maybe 2012 or so. He was older, and the newspaper business had
evolved.
Yes. But I think the mark was made. And I think to a great degree, to this day, it's a big reason, although he did not know that Cuba was going to suffer the way it has, and you were going to have this large exile community. He didn't know that Miami was a place where you could create Spanish language media that was going to be meaningful, independent of government repressions like you have in Latin America, in many countries, unfortunately. It comes and goes, but right now we're in a better trajectory in Latin America. But he knew it could be a launching pad. And so Diario Las Américas, before internet, was used with Eastern Airlines and Pan American Airlines.
It's all using the Wayback Machine.
So yes. The newspapers were printed and were exported. So you could buy it in Puerto Rico, in the Dominican Republic, in Argentina, and Buenos Aires. And it was also on the desk of everybody who worked for Western Hemispheric Affairs in the State Department. So I grew up with media and the profound belief that a free press is vital to the health, security, and well-being of a local community and of a nation as well.
Did your father ever envision that the paper would last so long? And what was some of the evolution that he saw in the media as he kind of grew the newspaper?
Well, the idea that, first of all, the Spanish language community would be able to grow and cement itself. I think Diario Las Américas was a big reason why we continue to speak Spanish in Miami-Dade County today, because it really cemented the language here without discriminating against English language speaking. To the contrary, the editorial was deliberately written in Spanish on top, but it was translated almost automatically into English on the bottom because there was a great desire for the English language community to understand what the editorial vision of the paper was. And it was a very conservative paper, to say the very least, but there was pride in that. And also it's a part of education. So he just really believed that a newspaper has to inform, but also shoot community and help support democratic values.
How do you think he did that? Do you think he accomplished that?
I think he definitely accomplished that. And I think that's why we grew and were able to strive. People don't realize what it was like in the early 60s of the exile community. And I feel of course, my family is originally from Nicaragua, but for me, I'm like a spiritual Cuban. I feel adopted by the Cuban community. And it's, how can you not, when you see everything that's occurred in Cuba, and you see so many people who come here and were forced out of their countries and were denied their freedoms, their families separated, imprisoned, some executed, and not see that suffering and not be solidarity. Not feel solidarity to their cause. And their cause is everybody's cause.
Sure.
Freedom has to be everybody's cause. And so I think, it wasn't easy. The banker had to start, sweeping the floors at a bank while he was able to get his papers and accreditation to be able to go up the ranks. But when you see the great success story, given the infrastructure to be able to succeed in a democracy like we have here, anyone with education and hard work and endeavor can make it to the top. And Miami-Dade County, well, look who our Secretary of State is today.
Sure.
Marco Rubio is, from Miami-Dade
Right,
County.
enjoy it.
Yeah. So it just goes to show you that anything's possible.
Absolutely. I want to be like a little. I would have loved to have been like a bug, right, in the dinner table with your dad, right? What was it like being his daughter? I know that he demanded that you speak Spanish. What else?
Spanish had to be spoken at home. And he would say, what are we going to do the day we go back to Nicaragua? And your grandmother's not going to understand what you're saying. And then my grandmother would come to Miami to visit us, and she would want us to speak to her in English. So she should practice her in English. And it was like, but at the end of the day, I'm so grateful he did, because even though amongst our siblings, very often, most of the time we'll speak in English. Learning English was going to be inevitable because where we went to school, it was in Miami Shores. It was the northern part of the county. So it was much more Anglo, as we would say. It was more English language dominant than other parts of Miami-Dade County. But Spanish really gave us that second language, that foundation. And besides, my dad, he spoke English academically well, but his accent was like this. So I was like, no, we'll talk to him in Spanish. But it was a great pride that he felt that speaking Spanish would also help us learn the culture. He wanted us to assimilate, and he knew we would, but he also wanted us to maintain our Hispanic culture, because that would enrich us as we grew forward. And when you look at other countries, and now that we're watching the World Cup and FIFA, all these players who speak English so well, and it's not their native language,
Right.
and you realize everywhere else in the world there is a great push and movement. It's part of education in its general sense to learn other languages and about other cultures. And so we're excited. When I was growing up here, French was the language of choice in school because of the Canadians. No, it's Spanish. That's the only reason. We are the gateway to the Americas.
Yes, and it's always important to be a well-rounded person and understand what's coming next. But yes, Espanol is the future of America. Tell me a little bit more about your dad on a personal level. What took him to take interest in journalism and start this? And it's not easy to say, hey, I'm just going to start a newspaper.
No, he was actually, and he was 22 years old when he was exiled. And then he went to Costa Rica. My mom and he were already novios. They were already dating. And so they got married in Costa Rica. And then he went to Panama and he got his PhD in international law with the idea of maybe practicing international law, but he decided to start looking at journalism, and he was an editorial writer for the Panama America, which is a newspaper that still exists today in Panama. And he did that for 3 years. And during that time, he was thinking, hey, you know what? We could have an impact of, having a free press and really talking about the important issues, especially in the editorial pages. And we can do that in other countries. Why don't we try to think? It's kind of like the idea of an international Herald Tribune at that time.
Yeah.
What can we do but for Spanish language? And so, that's where they were thinking, well, if we want to do it, let's do it in Miami. And he did it with his brother Francisco Aguirre, and they decided Miami was going to be the hub, the gateway to the Americas, and that was a great place to do it. Because when you look at, if you don't have free press, how do you inform? How do you communicate? How can you really help generate ideas?
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
and so Miami would be a great launching point. And he knew that the jets were coming, because remember, propeller planes back in the day, the jets were coming, and that was going to help make the news that you received a little bit more automatic. It's kind of funny to say it that way today, but you didn't have to wait 24 hours to be able to get the news. You could actually get the news earlier. But I think that aside from that, I think the editorial pages were probably his big pride and joy. It's what he really thought was important, because that could survive the test of time. Maybe the main headline wouldn't be so fresh when you got it, because it was, you would receive it 8 or 10 hours later after it was printed. And we can certainly appreciate that with the way news flies today.
Right.
But the editorial pages had content that were lasting.
That would agree. Yeah, and it is amazing how the press has evolved. I wonder what your dad would say about that today. Do you think he would welcome it, or do you think he would just say this doesn't work, this is terrible?
I think it's just a different way of looking at it. I would say one of the issues he felt was, as a word of caution, is that there is very little time for prudent analysis, because everything comes at us so quickly. We don't have an opportunity to really pause and say, well, let's think about it, and let's think about what the ramifications are. Because once it's out there, it's almost like a response is demanded instantaneously. And we have so many important issues at stake right now. It really does require a little time to think. But now a little time to think is like, okay, it's been 2 hours. So what are you going to do?
That's nice. And hence the rise of fake news, where we don't even know if what we're getting is the truth, right?
You don't know if what you're getting is true. It's harder. Media is so much more fractionalized today. Communication is so much more difficult. You don't know if what you're getting is true or not true. So it really does behoove us to take a little bit more time to say, instead of responding, and it's almost like we're being manipulated.
Yes.
Because the speed at which we get hit by information, be it accurate or not, is so fast that we really need to take back and say, wait a minute, and do it the old-fashioned way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's verify. Let's get 2 or 3 sources that confirm that this is true. But that takes a little bit of time.
It does.
And we just have to make sure that you can put something out there and you can say, this has not been confirmed. But once you even put something out there, if it's negative, it might taint one way or the other. So I think that we as consumers of news, and those of us who produce news, have to be careful and cautious, even though it's a time where people want things at such a rapid pace. It's just not always prudent.
Right. And there used to be a time where journalists actually
took the time to do that. Now it was required. It was required. Now they're moving so fast that we'll fix it later. We'll get it wrong. It doesn't matter. We just want to break the story.
And it doesn't really get fixed later.
It doesn't.
And even though when it is, so one of the things when people say, well, you're fake news or whatever, is because even when they make an update or a correction to the article online digitally, you don't even know it because they keep the same headline. And so it's in there somewhere that they
Or at the end.
But you think it's the exact same.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing because you don't know to look for it. Very rarely will they say updated anywhere.
Sure.
So really, it's unless they're producing it with a new headline so that you get a sense that this is a new story, you're not going to go back and read it.
And I think the most dangerous thing, right? So social media has been an amazing, addition to our society,
Yeah.
both good and bad, because now anybody can be a reporter, right? And if
But
something,
citizen journalism.
that's right. If something happens,
People are out with their cameras, being the reporters. Well, rather than helping the individual who's dying in the corner, yeah, there's a moral issue that we could get into and have a full side conversation. But how does social media change journalism for good or bad? Because, like you said, the story doesn't always get corrected. Doesn't get corrected on time, and the wrong story is already out there. It's been shared by other citizen journalists, and it just grows and it grows and it grows. And you get fed through the algorithms what you want to hear. You're not getting diversity of thought necessarily, huh?
So that's what makes it so much harder. I think you really have to go out of your way to look for different points of view. And look, I think social media is amazing on many levels. It helps us connect in unique ways that we never had that opportunity before. You don't have to subscribe to a cable channel to hear this viewpoint. Now through social media, through YouTube and so on. I mean, there are so many mechanisms to stay informed. You have to just kind of want to stay informed to make sure that, you're getting as much of a well-rounded opinion. I understand though, wanting to hear and having somebody come back and buttress what you think and say, because we get challenged all the time. And what we're really looking for is a sense of community through social media. So somebody else that affirms that, yeah, I agree with you. What you're saying is absolutely true, because especially in political worlds, you just get, hit all the time with the opposing side, and you really don't feel that sense of community sometimes, that people are affirming, yeah, I agree with what you say, that's absolutely true. So I can see that side, and it certainly does connect us, on multiple levels. But there is that danger that what you're hearing is not necessarily true. You have the growth of influencers, for example, who can very often be, if not always, paid people who are paid for by a campaign and so on. And you just need to, buyer beware.
Really let us all.
Yeah, buyer beware. Now, yellow journalism has always existed. Let's now pretend like, the Hearsts in California didn't do yellow journalism. Of course they did. And, there was always this idea that print media was conservative. Never was. They used to say, oh, it's black, white, and red all over, red being communist at the time. And so it was kind of like, so there was always that, but buyer beware. We're smart enough. I think we're smart enough to discern what's real and what isn't real.
Do you think this is what the founding fathers had in mind when they drafted that First Amendment? The very first freedom. What would they say if they came back today and saw everything that's going on in the media?
When Benjamin Franklin, after approving the Bill of Rights, was asked by a woman down the street, sir, so what do we have? And he said, it's a republic if you can keep it.
That's right.
And I think it was just always saying, this is an experiment. We think we can do it, but it's a great challenge. And it really requires an informed public, a community, to want to make sure that it withstands. Now, one of the fundamentals, and and Hamilton and Jefferson and John Adams and George Washington always spoke about it, that one of the most fundamental components is that it was really designed for a community of faith, people who believed in freedom of religion, but were a faithful people, a virtuous people who also had this great desire to want to work, to be a part of something important and appreciate what it was. But those virtues of, trust, hard work, courage, these are those types of virtues that were absolutely fundamental, reinforced by going to mass or services on Sunday. And that community that was built based, from church, from attending places of worship, were part of those fundamentals, where then from there you got into town halls, and you got into other discussions as to how the state flowed. So
Yes.
these are the type of things that have evolved over time. They knew we would be greatly challenged, but they couldn't have possibly envisioned how challenging it is today, especially when you have this growth of technology, the challenges of AI. I think when you look at AI, for example, the first challenge you would have to say is like, what does it mean to be human? Because these are some of these fundamentals we need to, into account. Our founding fathers couldn't have envisioned it, but yet they knew that these fundamentals could endure and were important.
It's amazing how they were almost able to predict the future, and how things would evolve, and then create a document that would adapt itself beautifully. 250 years later, in Washington, D.C., we're celebrating 250 years on the Great American State Fair. It was such a beautiful thing. And so many people from all over the country came to see history. And I hope you all had the opportunity to participate in our anniversary, because I think a lot of Latinos think, I don't need to celebrate that. I don't feel like celebrating. I'm not a part of that. They don't understand that we are a part of America's history, and we're going to be even more a part of America's history, Helen.
And our history has always been based on great sacrifice, right? So when you consider 250 years ago, our founding fathers and the women who were pioneers in founding our country really put it all at risk. I mean, they were committing treason against England. This was something where they could have been imprisoned somewhere. They could have been tried and hung. They could have had their properties confiscated. It was not easy. There was a physical war that had to be fought, and by the grace of God, we won. And then later on, we had a civil war that really put to a test the foundation and the unity of our country, and the values that tie us all together. And what does it mean? You need to be a nation of one, undivided, indivisible, and continuing to work for a more perfect union. And I think that's the critical component. Judy, people are so critical of our country and of where we are, but we always strive. We never say we're perfect. We're not. There isn't a perfect person walking this earth, but we do strive for a more perfect union. The only nation on earth that really declares that says that, and works for it every single day. But that requires that every single one of us, in our own way, participates one way or another by getting us there.
And that's exactly right. And if you want to comment on it, let us know in the comment section of YouTube. LIBRE is running a campaign right now called Un Pasito, and all it takes is one small step for every citizen of the United States to do something to protect our freedoms. And the freedoms that we're promoting are freedom, opportunity, rule of law. We're also talking about limited government, all those freedoms that help the American dream stay alive. And I want to talk, you were talking before about some fierce women back in the day that were unafraid and made things happen. I think you're one of those women. And I want to talk
I want to talk about more of your trajectory because not only are you amazing, an amazing journalist, you've worked at the White House. I want to give people an insight of what it's like to be a part of the most powerful office in the nation doing communications.
It was one of the hardest jobs because communications in the White House is 24/7. It never ends. There's always something that was happening. I was special assistant to President Trump in his first term as director of media affairs at the White House. Got to meet some of the most amazing people, real patriots, hardworking people whose names you may never know, hear, read about, but just really did what you were talking about, or what, pasito pasito, or paso por paso, paso grande. Did a lot of amazing things, all of these unsung heroes, but, public service is that we're public servants, and underline servant. It's to serve. It's not to be aggrandized. But it was hard because it was very different. My job was to make sure that print, radio, and TV, regional media had all the information they needed in order for us to be able to be successful in them understanding what the president was doing. And the president, now everybody's so used to it, but that was a revolution. You talk about revolutionary, that was revolutionary back then, because he was, his charm and great talent was that he wasn't a politician, and yet he stepped into the political world and really won precisely because of that, because he could speak to Main Street in such a way that even Wall Street was in awe of his effectiveness in communicating. People say, gosh, he resonates with me. I feel like he hears me. He understands who I am. And I think that great gift was something extraordinary, challenged the bureaucracy, which wasn't easy and continues to be so today. But the president did just amazing work talking about, let's return manufacturing to the United States. Why are we so dependent on countries abroad? And then when you saw what happened with COVID, we were so dependent on China for pharmaceuticals, on face masks, because everything we needed. And it really exposed how vulnerable we were to foreign entities like China, not friendly to the United States, actually enemies to us on every level. And yet President Trump, for years prior to that, was one of the first to really talk about that and say, America first. America first doesn't mean America alone, but it means American interests and national security number one. And that should be to, continue to be the way we think and look at things. But not everybody understood it at the time.
Sure. Yeah. America First has become Main Street. A lot of people don't agree with that, right? Why is that?
I don't understand why, the idea that we should be equal to others. No, on any level. When you're competing in sports, we've got kids, grandkids, they're competing in sports, and it's like, or when we were a long time ago competing in sports, it was like, no, I wanted to be better than the person next to me. I didn't hate the person next to me, but I wanted to compete to be better. You just wanted a level playing field. And so when you look at it and you look at our issues with national security, what's wrong with competing? When you buy a car, you want to buy the best car on the market. You don't want to buy the car that's
Right.
No, you want like the best. And I think that desire for excellence is what we need in order to succeed. Certainly what entrepreneurs need. The entrepreneurs can't settle for, I'm just going to be like my competitors. No, you're not going to survive. You're never going to, you have to show why you're better, and you have to fight for it.
And that's the American spirit, isn't it?
It's a big part of the American dream.
What is this movement of such hatred that we see, but yet everybody wants to settle in America, right? People criticize the United States of America, but there really is no other better place to live. We offer people opportunity. Everybody comes here for freedom and opportunity. And what can we do, especially the youth?
It's especially concerning that they don't have hope for the future, that that they don't have faith in the institutions. And I actually blame the adults, to tell you the truth, because you have a lot of people out there uh, being very, very hateful towards the country. And how can we curtail that? What should we do as the adults in the room?
Well, I agree with your
Yeah.
assessment. And I'll tell you, America is so desirable. We had to literally close the border. Everybody said it wasn't possible, but we had to literally close the border to be able to take charge of who's coming in and vetting people who are coming in. And I think that's absolutely important because, you know, we've had what, 15 million people come in. This is such a terrible place. Why are all of these people coming here?
Sure.
It's a desirable place because it has a level playing field. You come here, you can work really hard, you can get ahead, you can study, you can really become part of this new world and this new economy that we're seeing. And it's so exciting. And so we looked at, even when you look at, you know, these tech, you know,
Yeah.
brains, they all came from somewhere else. Their parents emigrated here and they worked hard and they studied. And there was no place of privilege. It's just as always, is achieving the American dream because there's a rule of law, there's a level playing field, and that helps us get where we want to go, where we're the drivers. I'm really concerned that younger people aren't looking to see what can I do to get ahead, and they're looking at what can you do for me to get ahead? Well, it doesn't really work that way. And so if you're waiting for government to give you a handout for you to get ahead, you've missed the boat.
It doesn't
You don't, first of all, it doesn't work, but you don't need government for that. You need government to help you with the safety and security of the country on a national level and a few other issues. But by and large, it's self-determination, our self-determination,
Yes.
that really guides you. And just the idea that you are a master of your destiny, that you can make it happen, that is so exciting because you can make the changes as you go along day by day to be more successful. And you just have to be more successful than yesterday. You don't have to get to be where Elon Musk is, you know, from today or tomorrow, but
But you can.
but you can.
That's the right thing.
And can you
Yeah.
and can you make it better? And we have the fundamental tools at our disposal in order to be able to do that. And we do it all the time.
Tell us what you think. I want, because this is controversial, you know. Do you think the American dream is still a possibility? Is America still the land of opportunity? I think it is. But I want to hear your opinion. So leave your comments. I know you come from not only a family of journalists, but a real powerful political family down here in Miami, Florida. Tell me about that chapter of your life, one of many. It's like you've lived 9 lives, Helen.
Well, I after I left the White House, I really wanted to come home. It was, you know, I was missing Florida, and Governor DeSantis at that time, they had reached out and asked me to be director of communications, so I did that in Tallahassee, and that's where we confronted COVID and all of those challenging times. That
It was incredible.
I can't even begin to tell you. And you know, this is the interesting one of the most challenging things, aside from the fact that, you know, we were learning like everybody else was what this, you know, infection was that people in government came down on us so hard in municipalities because they wanted to take control. You couldn't ask a question. You couldn't challenge the science. You couldn't say, why can't we use, you know, certain medications to be able to combat, you know, this virus and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden it was like, let's close down schools.
So many rights were violated.
So many rights were violated. Even the right to worship. In Tampa, for example, they closed down places of worship. No governor, no mayor, no president has that authority under our Constitution. So it really became a challenge to individual rights and what are the limits to government, which is when, then we woke up to see what was happening in schools, all that, you know, woke DEI and
That social media platforms were also censoring people that were against whatever the government was saying. It was very scary. We found out later. Yes.
100%. And so you really saw this collusion of what was happening. And, you know, if it hadn't been for COVID and it hadn't been for technology where we could get inside and see what was happening in the classrooms online, we wouldn't have known what was going on. And then we were talking about young people today not realizing that the American dream is alive and well. If you want it to be alive and well and work for you, because it's not what they're being taught in the classroom. Heck, they're not even taught the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's right. In a lot of districts.
How can you defend what you don't know?
Mm-hmm.
Fact of the matter is you can't. So that's why I think it's so important what Governor DeSantis did in Florida to implement the return of civics education so that we understand what our founding fathers put together, put to us, what a great opportunity that we have here, and then learn American history, good, bad, and ugly. But you have to learn it without bias to the best of our abilities.
Because you're doomed to repeat it, right? If you don't understand it. And that's why everybody here wants to come to Florida now.
It's been a great success story. And so not only are we beautiful, okay, sometimes we're a little too hot, but hey, there's something in more ways than one. There's something about our heat. So people are still wanting to come here and we welcome that. But come here, understanding who we are, appreciate who we are, and help us continue to grow in great ways.
Yes. You know, don't try to change something that isn't broken, right? Like people come from states that are broken. And then they come to states that are working just fine and they want to push the same policies.
Yeah.
No.
And that's going to, so we have people who are coming from New York, people who come from Chicago, some people who have come from the West Coast, and many actually, I would say people from California migrate to Texas or Nevada. It makes a lot of sense geographically. There's so much closer, and Texas is a great state. How could you not want to consider that?
But change in the landscape.
But don't change the landscape. Respect what made it desirable and why that's so important. And I think that's what really makes a difference. If we're winning, help us continue to win. And I think there's a great desire to want to do that. But we have to step up and also say, these are our values, support us.
Yes. And Latinos need to understand that their values are in many ways America's values.
100%.
Right? Family, faith, entrepreneurship, hard work.
The entrepreneurship part. So many. Miami-Dade County hasn't by and large had a lot of big corporations. You have corporate presence, regional presence, and that's changing also, where you actually have the transfer of these, corporate brain trusts moving into Florida, and not just Miami-Dade County, but throughout the state of Florida. But the entrepreneurial side is very Hispanic. And so when you look at Miami-Dade County, you look at the I-4 corridor, where you've got Hispanics that are very strong in the I-4 corridor, the Puerto Rican community is so strong there. And you see how that entrepreneurial spirit has made a huge mark. And so I work now for the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at FIU.
Yes, I was going to get into that.
And one of the things about Adam Smith that I love, he was a Scottish economist from the 18th century. And so one of the things that he talks about is he explains how capitalism works. And one of the things that's amazing about how capitalism works is that there is an entrepreneur, you're a baker, and then you have the self-interest that you want to make money from this business so you can grow and survive. So what you're doing is that you bake bread, but then you're also feeding a population, and that population that's well fed then can go to school or go out and work in different things and so on and so forth. So it's that invisible hand that moves the economy and has repercussions throughout that helps other industries by and large grow as well. You sell to restaurants. Restaurants cater to, people who want to eat out, that tourism industry and so on and so forth. So that's what entrepreneurs do by and large, whether it be a service-oriented community or not. But it's the growth of industry And that's in our hands. And I think we as Hispanics are really, really good at it. And we're really good at family owned businesses. And that's also an exciting opportunity that you can either pass it from generation to generation or sell it.
Well, we open business far greater rates than other other societies. So one of the amazing things now that you're involved with, obviously, you mentioned the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. That is the most important thing that I want to talk about here, because that is really one of the things that we focus on at the LIBRE Initiative, and how important economic freedom is for everybody to rise, but for Latinos to rise. That's why we come here, because economic freedom allows you to do all of that.
Right. And I'm not talking about the freedom to go buy whatever you want. That's not what economic freedom is, right? Tell me a little more about the center.
So Adam Smith was founded in 2020 by Governor DeSantis, and he has this vision and this mission that our founding fathers were just so amazing. And though Adam Smith wasn't a founding father, he was Scottish. His book, The Wealth of Nations, really was a great influence on our founding fathers in order to establish our Constitution. And Adam Smith didn't invent capitalism, but he explains how capitalism works in helping the entrepreneur, industry, business to be able to develop naturally, free from government intervention. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, the problem with government is that it's always getting in the way.
Yes.
So the idea is, fewer government regulations, let business thrive and do what it does, because through free markets, free being so important, free markets help determine, kind of like survival of the fittest to some degree. What do people really want? What's the most efficient way of doing it? How to stabilize? It naturally brings a price to the price point that people can afford, so on and so forth. So, supply and demand.
Sure.
And Governor DeSantis established Adam Smith. Carlos Diaz Rosillo is the founding director. He worked with me at the White House. He was working in the Department of Defense, and just, a great guy, great visionary. And Adam Smith has done a lot of successful work because we have fellows that are invited who are current heads of state, former heads of state, or members of government, or former members of government, who speak to our students and have seminar courses. They teach a minimum of 8 to 10 seminar classes per term, and they talk to the students and teach about the importance of government and how and in their field, economics, whatever area they want to discuss. And it's from all over Latin America, the United States, and now we are growing in Europe to bring those voices. Also, it's done at Florida International University in Miami. And so I think, that work that we've been doing, particularly with Latin America, has really had a profound impact in fomenting that dialogue on the importance of economic freedom. What does it mean to be economic free? It doesn't mean that there is no role for government at all. No, there has to be rule of laws. But over-regulation can kill the growth of business.
Yeah, no, it does.
The permitting happens.
Yes.
So we have El Índice de la Bureacracia at Adam Smith, which really measures, for example, the impact of heavy bureaucracy or little bureaucracy in a country's economy. And sure enough, the higher the index of bureaucracy that's controlling the mechanisms of production, the less economic output that you see. And so, we are a research institution. We're a teaching institution. We're about to launch 2 degrees, an undergraduate degree in government and political leadership, which is so important, undergraduate level and graduate level. And it launches now this fall term here at FIU in Miami, and we're really excited about that.
Oh, I'm excited about that. I might join those classes. We're going to drop the index of bureaucracy in the in our comments, but I want you guys to tell me, is there too much bureaucracy? We'd love to hear what you think.
And there's another one that's coming.
Okay.
The index of taxation. in countries, and how to measure that properly and how that affects economic growth. So ask your viewers, do you think there are a lot of taxes?
She's asking, do you think there are a lot of taxes? I have them know. And she'll get the comments. That'll help your next research, right?
Absolutely.
We're gonna
So I think that these kind of projects and working directly with college students, university students, and I have to tell you, the caliber of the students is phenomenal. I sit in on many of these classes, and I'm so impressed at how well versed they are. They've done their research. They're really interested. They're asking really smart, insightful questions, which is why I think we get, the caliber of fellows that we do. Alvaro Uribe from Colombia. We have Juan Guaido from Venezuela. Now the president-elect, or maybe by the time this airs, president of Peru, Keiko Fujimori. She just in our last mass, she was one of our fellows from Peru. And so we just have this high quality of people who have just done and provide that extraordinary insight, because we believe this is the part of conversation that helps form the debate and hopefully provides practical, hands-on leadership and skills that will help develop this younger generation.
Well, Florida International University is a fantastic institution. I have a marketing degree, master's from Florida International, so I can vouch for the programs there. This is so exciting, but I do know that not everybody thinks it's such a great idea to have an economic freedom program at the university level.
We certainly have people who are anti-economic freedom, who those detractors who are afraid of the great work we're doing, because when you look at, I happen to think that FIU has done extraordinary work in dealing with Latin America. And of course, it's in Miami, and so it's the gateway to the Americas, as we've said before. But I think Adam Smith in particular has done an extraordinary job. And what a coincidence, by stimulating these conversations, by stimulating these discussions, by having seminars, including in some countries, I think that it's really brought about a profound change and better debate in Latin America. And look at what you're seeing. You're seeing a political change in Latin America.
It's extraordinary.
I'm not saying it's because only of Adam Smith, but I think, and I feel very proud that Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom has been a part of that process, where you see that turnaround, where people are engaging and becoming much more aware and fighting back, taking back what rightfully belongs to them, and not what the community wants, what the the left wing part of these countries wants to give you, which is greater government control and sadly government repression as a consequence.
And it's funny, because with the World Cup, we've seen so many people saying, hey, America's not that bad. We love it here.
Despite what mainstream media says, it's actually a really nice place to visit, and Americans are nice.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part where they're going, especially like the games in Kansas. And at first, when I saw some of those games in the Midwest, I was going, FIFA in the Midwest, really? They think football is something different than soccer.
That's America.
But they got a chance to see real America. And so I'm just really excited for that, because we're great, we're a great nation. We're wonderful, friendly people who are just like everybody else, working hard, family oriented, with a smile on our faces as often as we can. We're not the ogres that were painted to be, just the contrary. And we also have a helping hand. We want to help others, get ahead too.
We're just fangirling over America in this episode, aren't we?
I think that's something we should be doing all the time.
Yes. And as a mom, right? What do you want for the future of America?
I want America to be a place where my children and all our children can be safe, where they can be happy, and they define happiness on their own terms. so that they can thrive, and where we can be a place where it's safe to go to church. Freedom of religion, I think, is one of those freedoms that we don't understand so well. And when we talk about the First Amendment, it's not a mistake that it's the first freedom that's cited in the First Amendment, because freedom of religion guarantees freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of conscience, and freedom to dissent.
Yes.
And if you don't have freedom of religion, you really don't have all of those other freedoms either. So no wonder in Nicaragua and in Cuba, they fight the church. Because they don't want,
right.
because they don't want freedom of conscience. They don't want freedom of defense, of assembly.
The government is your church, and
They don't want to divide.
yes.
They don't want divided listen, a free conscience doesn't serve tyranny very well.
Yes.
So this is why you have, these communist countries that actually, we have to be appreciative of that. And I think we have to continue to nurture that sense of community. I want there to be a sense of community. I think sometimes we spend way too much time focused only on who's president or senator or congressman or governor. Please focus on your local community. Who's your commissioner? Who's representing you on your school board? Who's your mayor? We learned from COVID that those local leaders have a greater impact on your immediate quality of life than any of the others. Look, I love,
Politics is local, isn't it?
I love the Trump administration and many of the things that they're doing. But guess what? They won't come pick up the garbage. They're not the ones who are going to make sure that the street, around the corner, they fix up the pocket, ¿cómo se llaman those silvers? And with soldering, and all of those things. No, they're not gonna take care of
The
that.
tire companies are making a fortune out with potholes. It's a marketplace.
And if you're really worried about what's happening inside the classroom, who's your representative on the school board? And as Hispanics, it's a real challenge because in Latin America, public school officials don't exist.
It's something unique to the United States, to the American model of education.
So Latinos don't think they have a voice. They don't think they have.
They don't think it really matters, and it does. Your voice matters, and you can vote to make a difference.
Yeah, question everything. I can't let you go without you telling me a really cool story about the White House. Something that was super cool, or something that most people might not know. Tell me a fun moment that you had.
So when you look at the White House, where to begin? So when you look, first of all, you meet the neatest people. My office was the White House complex. It's actually a quite large complex. And there's a building right across from the White House that people see, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the Eisenhower, we call it the Eisenhower building. And it's this beautiful old executive building. And the floors, it's got 4 floors, and you go up the stairs, wide staircases. It was, built in the late 19th century. And it's just majestic as you go up those steps. But every floor has that black and white tile floor. And for the first week, because I'm a little despistada, I get, every floor kind of looks like lunch pail. Took me forever to figure out where the
It took me forever to figure out where the exit to the building was. And I would think to myself, man, who's ever watching the security camera is going like, Sam's Helen, who can't figure out where the exit is because she keeps going in circles.
But
you were expecting the place.
It was the most exciting thing. And I think one of the things that, some of the coolest things is that we used to do videos of people who were, you had families of survivors of victims of violence. And you had the opportunity to meet families of veterans or who lost family in a war. And that one-on-one opportunity to meet these wonderful families, to be a part of the conversation of the damage fentanyl did, and to speak to the families who would say, my son or my daughter was only 16 years old, and they didn't know that whatever they were taking.
The tip of a pencil, that's all it takes. With fentanyl. Yeah, it's very dangerous. Right. It's a
And they died.
terrible thing that's happening.
Or the issue of addiction. It really showed me that every policy decision has a real life personal impact on people. And it really matters. And seeing these folks face to face was so meaningful to me. It made me so proud. And it made me want to get up and make today a better day.
Any moment with the president that sticks out?
Oh my goodness. There were amazing times in the White House. President is as wonderful, as polite, and as excited and high energy as you can imagine. But he's so amazingly polite. Always, how are you? Are you having a good day? Good, I'm so glad. What are you doing today? And so he was always just absolutely wonderful, very open with the media. And before the president, everything with media, you have to remember, was everything so controls and environmental, and who was going to be able to ask my question? Oh, no. He comes in and he absolutely takes over, and he would point to people as to he would want it. And so you just say, well, I hope this goes well, because, he would be his own handler on many levels. But it was that relationship with him that was just so engaging, so honest. And I think for some people, it's just really shocking. And now we appreciate it and we love it. But that authentic voice back then was so new, and people were trying to handle him and teach him how to. And first of all, you couldn't. It didn't work well. And he just is who he is. And that's what people love and appreciate. And I hope that, we, look at this and say, that's what we need from leaders. We want people to not tell us what sounds pretty. Tell us what you really think. We're not going to always like it, but honesty and transparency is what we always say we want. So when you hear it, appreciate it. And he was always honest and transparent, but extremely generous, extremely professional, and extremely thoughtful. Those are the things that I think about him that maybe people don't know, but he always was that way.
And I think every member that's serving the community should be that way. Politicians got a really bad rap, right? Because we don't always get what we think we're going to get. So, it's working. It's working for him. And no matter where you stand on the political aisle, we can only wish the person in the White House the best, right? And we need to quit the hatred, because that is not America. That's un-American.
It's un-American, and it doesn't get us where we need to go.
It does not. It does not, because we all live in this country. We should all want freedom and the best for this country.
And if you don't agree with your leader, guess what? The beauty of our Constitution is that it allows us to correct our mistakes.
That's exactly right.
Go back and vote differently, or get people to vote your way for the next election.
And that is why the Constitution has worked for 250 years. Now, I can't let you go without telling me what your favorite recipe is, because it is sabor a freedom, and sabor a freedom is everything, including what we eat. And, Latinos are all better meals. What is your favorite meal?
So, from Nicaragua, my favorite meal, and it's not just because of Nicaragua, but it's just like really good, repocheta, which is that white corn flour tortilla, which you can buy actually in a lot of markets. It's called masarina, and I think even Quaker makes it, Quaker Oats, but it's masarina, and it's white cornmeal, as opposed to tortillas in Mexico, for example, which is the yellow cornmeal. This is the white cornmeal, and you make that, and you fill it with queso, queso como tipo cuajada. It's a softer cheese. Le pones repollo, which is like, I know in English it kind of like doesn't work when you say it, but it's like, ¿cómo se llama repollo? It's like sour. It's like
It's coleslaw?
It's coleslaw, it's with vinegar.
Yes, it's a different.
It's with vinegar and salt, and you put it, and you can make it like rice and beans. So it's like our own burrito,
Yes.
but it is so amazingly wonderful, and it's not expensive to do. You can do it at home, and it's just really so healthy for you. But you can make it with the beans in Nicaragua are a little different. They're a reddish. They're not big like the American red kidney bean. They're a little bit bigger, but they're reddish. Just absolutely delicious. A different sazon. In Nicaragua, you don't really use a lot of spice, hot sauces or things like that, like you do in Guatemala, for example, or in Mexico. But you build your tortilla the way you want it. And tortilla is fundamental. I mean, in breakfast, you always have tortilla, even if you're eating with eggs and frijoles. You're always going to want your white tortilla.
It's amazing how
I want it now.
your eyes lit up. Yeah, I think you're gonna go grab some of that when you get out of this interview.
I might go buy some because I will tell you, I talk a big deal. I don't make it so much at home, but it's just,
And it reminds you of home, doesn't it?
it does.
Gives you the warm and fuzzy.
You know what? Just the smell when it's cooking, it's like,
Yes.
oh, it brings back the memories of childhood. Those senses, those 6 senses, and that sense of smell, yeah, takes me back.
It sure does. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Gosh, it's so exciting. We could talk for more and more hours. We could be here all day.
Well, Judy, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. You are also one of those dynamic women in our Hispanic community. Thanks for all that you do, and thanks for LIBRE for putting this together.
Thank you, Helen. Well, you're welcome here anytime. And I know we're going to see you soon, out and about doing your thing. You're not done yet.
Lots more to do.
Thank you. Well, we want to hear what you think about this amazing interview. We covered so many topics, and every American dream has a story, and we're here to tell it. Join us on the next show, and you could catch us on social, on all the directories, and visit our website, salvadoranfreedom.com. Until next time.